Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios, this is Talking Politics, and I am the Professor Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. This is what I'm thinking about right now here in Hudson County. Folks, this past Saturday, the Hudson County Young Democrats had their reorganization meeting take place, and without a doubt, a change in leadership means some trouble for Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop. Now, let me give you some context here and a little bit of a backstory so you can understand where I'm coming from. Now, first and foremost, I think we know that Mayor Stephen Fulop has had considerable political capital since becoming the mayor back in 2013, but slowly but surely it has eroded. And let me just tell you this much. What happened this past Saturday with Brian Platt, the previous president in office for the Hudson County Young Democrats, being removed during the reorg election, says a lot about how not only the organization, but also the Hudson County Democratic organization as a whole is lacking any sort of confidence in Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop. We know with a complete new overhaul of the executive board, again, congratulations to them. Certainly we'll see where they take the Hudson County Young Democrats well into 2019 and certainly into next year's very big presidential election year in 2020. But let me just say this, though, about Stephen Fulop, and this is something that I wouldn't say I've been holding in for some time, but it's something I think that needs to be sort of outlined here. And let me just start off by saying that I like Stephen Fulop, the guy. He's been nice to me in the past. He's been very sort of amicable and at times genuine with me. But in terms of Stephen Fulop, the politician, well, that leaves a lot to be desired in my eyes. And I'll sort of use this example. Now, this is something that sort of is very personal to me because I know that a lot of people in Jersey City have agreed with me. They've talked to me off the air about it, and certainly I don't have any reason to sort of fabricate this story. But one of the things that sort of upset me about this entire sort of time period with Stephen Fulop is the fact that, folks, back in 2012 when he was running for mayor, and mind you, he was running against the machine. At the time, the incumbent mayor, Jerry Healy, and the current establishment in the Hudson County Democratic organization. And sure enough, what happened with Stephen is, he was running a very sort of energetic grassroots campaign. And this is a guy back in 2012 going into the spring of 2013, shortly before the mayoral election in May of that year, who was not really getting any press from either the Jersey Journal, the Hudson Reporter, or any other sort of local news affiliations and organizations. But there was one guy who gave him press at every event. There was one guy who decided to go to any campaign stop with Stephen Fulop and give him an interview and give him any sort of publicity, which, again, he used to his benefit, and certainly he would upload it to social media or in general. And that one guy was me. And one of the things I took pride in was the fact that, everyone loves an underdog. And that's what Stephen Fulop was back in 2013. I go to campaign stops all over downtown Jersey City, in parts of the Heights, parts of Greenville, parts of the South Side. Parts that I'm not very fond of, but I went anyway because that's where the news is. And sure enough, I wasn't surprised when Stephen Fulop won in May of 2013. It was one of the biggest political upsets in Hudson County's history. And certainly once he took office, Stephen and I had sort of a gentleman's agreement. And folks, where I come from, a handshake means something. A handshake tells me that we have, some sort of, maybe idea that we can work together, that we can coincide and collaborate. And sure enough, during that summer, Stephen Fulop and I set up some interviews where we would go to his office on Grove Street and talk about the issues that mattered to Jersey City residents. Now, I was doing this while employed at another news organization, and certainly, it helped my traffic, but it also helped the exposure for Stephen Fulop. Upon taking office, we saw that Stephen Fulop's political capital was as high as it ever was. He had a weekly column on the Huffington Post. His op-eds would regularly run in the New York Times, and he was a guy who, again, whose political capital was skyrocketing. But in the 6 years since taking office, Stephen Fulop's political capital has faded quicker than the New York Mets. Now, I'm not trying to be inflammatory. I'm not trying to smear the mayor. I'm not trying to say anything that's bombastic. Everything I've just said is completely true. And one of the things that really upset me is that as soon as Stephen Fulop took office, he already had his eyes on something else. As we all know, in the spring of 2014, there were much rumors going around about his desire to win the governor's mansion shortly after the end of Chris Christie's second term. Coincidentally, we all know what happened, as he ended up having to bow out and back Phil Murphy for the Democratic nomination for the gubernatorial election in 2017. In the time since then, he's pissed off a lot of politicians, starting with U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, U.S. Representatives Albio Ceres, and of course the entire Hudson County Democratic organization. But it all came to a head last spring when he attempted to enact some sort of coup by having, or at least the attempt, to remove Hudson County Executive Tom DeGise, by at least motivating him to not run for another term. We all know what happened, and that potential civil war blew up in his face. Now, as Stephen Fulop took the L last spring, he's continued to keep taking L's in Hudson County. And this most recent one was with the Hudson County Young Democrats. I think it's a sign that people are losing faith in Stephen Fulop. Now, I understand, back in 2017, he won re-election by almost a percentile of 77%. I get that. That's an overwhelming re-election win in 2017, and certainly it shows that Jersey City residents were with him. Now, as he seeks a third term coming up in 2021, a lot remains to be seen about whether his political capital is still as high as it's ever been. It's quickly eroding, and we don't know where it's going to take Stephen Fulop, whether it takes him for another term or it takes him for another L. We'll find out in the next 2 years, but certainly this past Saturday, with the Hudson County Young Democrats, the removal of Brian Platt as president speaks volumes about what the party and what the county organization feels about Stephen Fulop. We'll see what happens in the weeks and months and even the years ahead here, not only in Jersey City, but in Hudson County. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, this week on the most recent edition of Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. Well, my guest this week was Ward E. Councilman James Solomon. Now, he joined me for over an hour on the podcast, and here are some of the highlights which really should be of interest to you with some of the issues that, quite frankly, are the most pressing right now, not only in Jersey City, but for residents throughout Hudson County. First and foremost, we started discussing his policy proposals when it comes to pedestrian plaza in downtown Jersey City. Now, I've talked about this on previous opening monologues and also on the podcast. But folks, James Solomon certainly is very ambitious about what he wants to do with pedestrian plaza in terms of finding a balance between, hey, making it lively and vibrant for downtown residents, but at the same time, also improving the quality of life. Let's hear what he had to say.
Of ordinances. But James, I want to ask you this, because this is something that, to me, as a guy that worked in hospitality and nightlife for many years during grad school to pay my bills, like many of us do, I understand your desire to improve that quality of life for residents in downtown. And it's important. You want to keep downtown vibrant. You want to keep it lively. You want to keep it a destination that people want to move to. But James, my issue is, and this is an issue I have with Hoboken residents who bitch and moan about two bar crawls, in a calendar year, that come to downtown Hoboken, both in the spring and in the winter. And I get it, James, that these are bar crawls that sometimes are inconvenient, but they help the local economy. The local police department in Hoboken has done an exceptional job in, managing it to make sure that it doesn't get rowdy, that people aren't acting like damn fools. And we've seen the results. But when people move to a downtown area, James, that's just inevitable. And one of the things that when I looked at your proposals, they're all great. And I even said this, I'm not trying to, blow smoke up, your what, because I went on record as saying that I applaud the councilman. I think these are great initiatives. Right. But the residents that are living downtown, I think sometimes some residents, James, they try to talk out of both sides of their mouth when it comes to, like, yes, we want to live in downtown. We love that it's lively. We love it. But if you move downtown, you kind of know what you're getting into. Like, you can't want to live in downtown and want to be quiet like Paramus. Like, that doesn't fly with me. And I think when I hear residents go to social media and sort of raise tantrums about it, that kind of raises my ire, because it makes it seem like, well, you want to live downtown. This is what part of downtown has to deal with. And when I see these proposals, they're great, but are we sort of getting to a point, James, that maybe some residents are making more noise than they should about, the quality of life downtown?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I think it gets to, like, the heart of what we're trying to do. And, I'm going to be honest, of course there are residents who don't have perspective, particularly new residents who moved in, in the last year or two. However, I also respect that, 10 years ago, the downtown didn't have the same degree of nightlife. And what I'm really looking for, the word I always come back to, is balance. And what I was trying to go through in the proposal, and we can talk about some of the details of it, including, improved noise ordinance, trying to get some increased regulations on nightclubs and just not allow them to continue to expand, not to prevent them from expanding, but not to kind of have unlimited expansion. It's probably the best way to phrase it. Is just to try to get that balance, to say, hey, we want a vibrant nightlife. We want people to be able to go out and, enjoy. I'm in dad phase now, so those days are over for me. But
sure.
There are many people who still enjoy. But I think that what I'm concerned with is, yes, where it is today, there's some negative quality of life issues. But really, my concern is 5-10 years from now. 5 years from now, if we don't just have on the main strip, right, Porta, Ashford, Grove Square, a few other spots. We have them now. But if we add double, triple, even quadruple the number of spots, I think that doesn't just add more noise. I think it actually can totally change the character of that neighborhood. And part of what drew me and a lot of people to downtown Jersey City was that we felt like we had a really vibrant community, but not one that kind of was overwhelmed with quality of life issues. And that's what we're trying to get at, just to strike that balance between let's have a vibrant nightlife, but let's ensure that people's quality of life remains at the top of mind and isn't further deteriorated from where it is today.
Listen, James, and that's a good point, and we'll certainly go over these proposals that you have in a little bit of detail in a moment. But one that really stood out for me, and I think one that I think is going to surprise people tonight, in terms of the four that I saw that you were really, really adamant about, the one that really stood out for me was the loading and unloading zone. I think in this climate that we're living in, where more and more people are utilizing ride-sharing apps, where you see more and more deliveries because you see more businesses, you see more restaurants popping up, I think that the proposal of a 24-hour loading zone on both sides of Christopher Columbus Drive, I think that is unbelievably important. And I think that is something that when it comes from a quality of life issue and safety, James, I think that's the one that stood out for me the most. What's been the feedback in terms of the four that you've been proposing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I appreciate the kind of compliment on that proposal, and everyone's been on board with that. If you've driven on at the intersection of Columbus and Grove at any time of day, it's not safe. You got the Ubers and the Lyfts that are stopping. You've got delivery trucks. You've got some of the shuttles. And I agree, we're moving further and further along with ride sharing, with Uber and Lyft. And I think there are safety problems that occur. So everyone has been on board with turning that into a 24-hour loading unloading zone, really making sure that we're able to get safe delivery of people and vehicles to the neighborhood. Of the other three, I think a couple comments on the noise ordinance, but I think most everyone kind of agrees that we should have a noise ordinance that's enforceable, and allowing for our officers to be able to enforce it in the evenings is something I think most agree with. And the other two is where there's been a kind of bigger, more robust discussion. And the other two, we have potential limits on some of the rooftop entertainment. And then we've got basically saying for future nightclubs, they can't be within 250 feet of another one. And I can go through both of them. On the rooftops, we've listened, and I think what we're going to do is we're still going to, make sure that there's clear rules in place. And we just want to make sure that if you're out on the rooftop, you got a band or you've got a DJ or whoever, we just want to make sure that the noise isn't just carrying throughout the neighborhood, and that at 2 a.m., if you're trying to go to sleep, you're not being kept up by, kind of a raucous party, given that now Porta's rooftop and now 626 and Ashford are opening up their rooftops. So I think we'll be able to find a medium, but we've heard people, and we're not going to kind of end the rooftops. We're going to try to find a balance and have a medium. On the other one, the kind of limit on nightclubs can't be within 250 feet of another one. I've heard, some folks who disagree, who say we should continue to expand those. But on that, I think I'm gonna hold firm and see if I can get the support to push it forward, because you've seen Porta and Ashford move in. That's all fine. You got 4 or 5 other spots on that same block, let alone the next couple blocks, that could turn into venues of similar size. And we're talking capacities of, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm guessing between 500 to 1,000. And that can really add, because you can't control, there's quality of life issues, you can do better enforcement, but sometimes there's just a volume issue. If you go from 1,000 drunk people at 3 a.m. to 4,000 drunk people at 3 a.m., there's just a volume, right? There's just, you can't enforce that. That's just going to change the way people kind of live in the neighborhood. And so that's where we're going. And, I respect the folks who kind of disagree with that approach, but I do think it's really important to, again, create that balance between the nightlife and the neighborhood.
Now, certainly the councilman outlined a tremendous amount of policy proposals there. And the ones that really stood out for me was obviously the amount of new bars and restaurants potentially that could be set up in downtown Jersey City, but also folks about sort of the noise pollution that tends to sort of dominate that area of the downtown section. Folks, listen, as I've mentioned to you on this program before, having worked at nightlife and hospitality for many years during grad school to pay bills, I understand the necessity for it. But one of the things that really, and I pointed this out during the podcast, was the idea that Jersey City residents, especially in the downtown section, love living in that area. But folks, you can't live downtown and not expect to have some noise and have some sort of, not commotion, but sort of the congestion that's expected within that area of the city. Folks, again, you can't expect to live in a downtown section and you want it to be as quiet as Paramus. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. So again, as I applaud the councilman for sort of emphasizing the importance of balance, I think it's also important to make sure he doesn't sort of overreach with some of these policy proposals. And as he discussed, he'll certainly, introduce them for the agenda with the city council in the coming weeks and months, and we'll find out how his council members will vote on these proposals coming up in Jersey City. Now, moving along during the interview, folks, we also discussed the perception that's out there about the Jersey City Board of Education. And quite frankly, they've been in the headlines for some time. And you know what? I don't know about you, but they're not getting the best press. The councilman talked about how he views the Board of Education and the issues surrounding this organization. Let's check it out.
James, moving along here in Jersey City, I know that in the headlines, certainly the Jersey City Board of Education has dominated the news cycle for about a year now, right? With everything going on with the budget.
They have.
Some of the disarray within the leadership about, the superintendent, how do you, the process of filling that position, some, not mistrust, but some, I hate to use the word chaos, but quite frankly, some miscommunication taking place among the trustees. I know that recently in the news cycle, there was some heavy criticism levied on members of the Board of Ed for missing the city council budget hearing. What are your thoughts about that specific scenario, and what do you think about the idea, quite frankly, of what the Board of Ed should be doing and what should they not be doing right now? Again, you're a dad. You'll be sending your daughter or other kids, in the future to Jersey City Public Schools. And what concerns you right now about some of the language or rhetoric we're hearing from the Board of Ed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the number one issue in Jersey City. Let's think about, long term. I want families to stay. Right? I obviously have my daughter. She's going to go to PS5 in a few years, and making sure that we have high quality, well funded schools is really important. And some of the board members are friends and friends from opposite sides. Matt Shapiro is a friend, Jerry Lyons is a friend. You have a good relationship with Musab Ali. I think they're very good people on the board that I know have the best interests of students at heart. And I say that to say that I've really been concerned over the last month or two of where the board and the district, the decisions they've made and they've taken. And, I think we had this sort of, I would call it bizarre situation where the board passed a unanimous resolution asking the city council for money. And so the city council said, okay, well, let's have a public hearing to discuss it. And then they didn't show up to the hearing. And I understand, that from their perspective, they're a different legal entity. They want to have some independence. That's fine. You could come back to us and say, we're happy to meet with you, however, only under these, parameters. That's a very reasonable thing to say. But to kind of just not show up at the last minute and then, they didn't, a certain board president, Thomas, didn't, I think, correctly understand the statutes and the way in which the city council can give money to the Board of Education. That's really concerning. We're in. It's not just this year; it's a long-term crisis, and we're really looking for leadership from the board, a sense that they have things under control, that they're communicating effectively. And the layoff notices that went out. I was literally right before I got on the phone with you. I was at a community meeting in Hamilton Park, and one of the parents, PS37 Cordero School, raised their hand and they said, we've heard from the board that the layoffs are being rescinded for instructional staff. However, those teachers haven't gotten the rescind notices yet, and they're out looking for jobs. They say, why are they going to trust that rescind notice is actually showing up in the mail? And that's a kind of a chaos, for lack of a better word, that I don't know if it was necessary. And so I'm really looking for the board to kind of give me the confidence that they have not just this year's funding situation under control, but the next couple of years. They've signed a new teacher's contract. I love teachers. I want them to do well. Can the board tell me what's their funding plan for that contract? They signed it. So next year, how much do they anticipate raising taxes to fund that contract or finding efficiencies? Give me that sense that next year these layoff notices aren't coming out either. And if they need city council support next year, we're a willing partner, but we can only be a willing partner if the other guy's shaking his hand too, putting his hand out for you to shake too. So, the last month has definitely been concerning to me.
Lastly, during the interview, he discussed his support for Hudson County Democratic Organization Chairwoman Amy DeGise. Now, it's coming up on 1 year almost that she took office after defeating Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack in the Hudson County Democratic Organization's reorganization meeting last June at Kearney High School. In almost a year since taking office, Amy DeGise has taken the county and even the state by storm with her outreach, with her visibility, and quite frankly, how hard she's working for the Democratic Party. Let's see what the councilman had to say about Amy DeGise.
Again, we both like to grade. I'm a teacher. How would you grade Chairwoman DeGise now, coming up in a year? I mean, in terms of her work with the party and what she's been able to do to really elevate the CDO back to what a lot of people think that it should have been at.
Yeah, I mean, a great first year, right? I think Amy's done really, really well. And, the things that she's done particularly well are, I think she's very thoughtful. She listens. She does a lot of outreach. She hears from everybody in the party and tries to find ways to move things forward and work together. So, her goal, I know, is to make Hudson, a political powerhouse again. And we need that, right? I mean, people ask me why we lost our state aid in Trenton, for our schools, our school funding in Trenton. And, there's, all kinds of theories, but part of it was pure politics. Right? We didn't have the power in Trenton that Hudson should have, given our size, given our strength. So I'm glad she's doing that. From my perspective, one thing that I'm going to, try to work with her on is trying to open up the party. We're kind of an old machine party, and I understand that, and I understand where people are coming from there. But we want to see more transparency, let the people have greater say in endorsements and in future elections. And I understand that's a process, and I'm going to try to be as constructive as I can be towards moving us forward in that regard. But that's all, hopefully it's all intra-family, right, where you respect people. And I think she's done a very, very good job of being communicative, very good job of being present, and has been a good leader for the party. So we hope it continues.
Certainly the councilman had a lot to say. And of course, if you want to listen to the entire audio interview, you can always go once again to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson. You can listen to it anywhere, anytime from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Now with some local news I want to discuss. And folks, here's an issue I think that should resonate to residents not only throughout Jersey City, but throughout the county. And a very good editorial that came out, as a matter of fact, this week in the Jersey Journal. Talk about another unacceptable delay in alerting the public to a sex attack. Great editorial this week, again, in the Jersey Journal. And I'll sort of give you some context about what it entails. Now, again, on Sunday morning during Memorial Day weekend, a burglar not only broke into a North Bergen home, but he also sexually assaulted a 49-year-old woman. And yet it took 11 days, that's right, folks, 11 days, which is nearly 2 weeks, for the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office to alert the community that a sexual predator was indeed on the street. Now, only within recent days was the man charged in the attack, and did Prosecutor Esther Suarez issue sort of a very minimal statement on social media. Now, folks, again, and one of the things that really resonates about this editorial in the Jersey Journal, and I'm totally on board with it, is this is indeed unacceptable. This can happen. Now, in its direct sort of opposition to sort of Suarez's own statements after the rape and murder of a Jersey City woman in Lincoln Park recently, she was insisting that, that her office keeps the public informed through her Twitter account and that they should not rely on local news. Well, as soon as the report came out in North Bergen of this woman's ordeal, Suarez, what she should have been doing, is alerting the public through her Twitter account and through notices to the press so that residents can at least be on the alert and take the necessary measures to protect themselves. The fact that she didn't, quite frankly, is disturbing. Now, again, I have a mom, I have an aunt, I have a grandmother, I have friends, I have a significant other. Listen, I worry for our female residents in Hudson County. And if the prosecutor's office is being this lethargic, this lackadaisical, and this cavalier in its effort to alert the public about a potential sexual predator, well, that's not acceptable, folks. And that's something that, quite frankly, she should know better about. Now, I've had some issues with Prosecutor Suarez for some time now. Certainly, she's taken some shots at local media, whether it be the Jersey Journal, the Hudson Reporter, or any online news mechanisms. But I'll tell you this much. One of the things that Esther Suarez cannot be doing is not alerting the public about what's going on when it comes to these sort of attacks. This could have been your mom. This could have been your neighbor. This could have been someone you care about. And if the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office is going to take this sort of cavalier attitude, quite frankly, I think it's disappointing. Now, I don't want to go as far as call it despicable, but quite frankly, folks, the fact that the Prosecutor's Office is being sort of this sort of lackadaisical about this entire endeavor, I'll tell you, it should concern you, because it definitely concerns me. And just sort of, looking at sort of the account of that day, for example, folks, shortly after it happened, quite frankly, the prosecutor's office was, again, sort of dragging their feet. And is this what we want from the county's top law enforcement agency? Don't we want to be alerted about these sort of developments? Now, again, whether it was the untimely death of the woman in Lincoln Park or even this sexual assault, folks, as a community and as the public, we deserve to be in the know. So one of the things that I would certainly urge Prosecutor Suarez to sort of take into consideration is the fact that, when these sort of events take place, you need to do a better job of alerting us. It's not just about so much putting everything on your Twitter, but send out press releases, send out automated robocalls. We see it all the time, folks. And we deserve to be safe. We deserve to feel safe. And we also deserve to know what's going on within our own communities. Shame on you, Prosecutor Suarez, for not being more vigilant and being more proactive when it comes to alerting the public about issues like this. We'll see what happens in the weeks and months ahead, but certainly reading this editorial this week in the Jersey Journal, I don't know about you, but it gave me a moment of pause. It should all give us a moment of pause as well, when we know that, again, the county's top law enforcement agency isn't working as hard as they should to prevent sexual assaults, and more importantly, to let us know when they're taking place, not only in Jersey City, but throughout all the municipalities of Hudson County. Well, folks, that's the show for this week. Again, for all the excellent programming provided by the Hudson Media Group, you can always check it out by going to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and also www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Once again, if you want to listen to this week's audio podcast, you can always listen to it by going to any PC, Mac, or smartphone, as well as any tablet, anywhere, anytime, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook. Also follow it on Instagram and Twitter. Once again, folks, in advance, I want to wish you all a very happy Father's Day. To all the dads out there, keep doing a great job like you do. To my dad, to my uncle, to all the dads everywhere. Keep up the great job. Again, we love you all for everything you do every single day. If we're talking politics, we're doing it right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday.